My father-in-law has diabetes and gives himself insulin injections, and he gave himself an insulin injection and then wasn't really hungry, so didn't eat anything. So his blood sugar dropped down really low, and so um, we did find a drink for him, but same thing happened. It went up and came back down, and so the paramedics got there and they checked it, and it was in the 30s. His blood sugar was in the 30s. So it's not best to have what you were always told, have orange juice or a glucose drink or something like that. Yeah. It's not really the best.
Hey guys, I am waiting for Dr. Saunders to hop on. And so I thought, you know what, let's just go ahead and get started. I have a quiz up that I would love for you guys to answer. Today, we're going to be talking about phase 2 of the Diabetes Solution Kit. And so I kind of want to see where you guys are with using our program. That'll give us an idea of the things that we need to talk about today. So I hope you guys all had a wonderful new year. I cannot believe we're in 2024 already. Just crazy to me, but I'm excited and just ready for a fresh new year. There's something just fun about that. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Saunders. Let's see, I think you're on mute. So
Did you miss me?
I actually just created a little poll here. So we're going to kind of see where everyone is that's hopping on, where they're at with the Diabetes Solution Kit, what phase maybe they might be in.
Oh.
And then there's some other questions or some other options. You can say, I haven't even started, or I don't know what the Diabetes Solution Kit even is, because I know that some of you probably aren't familiar. So keep filling that out, and we're just going to chat here for a minute. Before we get started, I just want to mention that Dr. Saunders is not your doctor. And so the things that he mentions or talks about today are for general purposes only. Please consult with your health provider when making any decisions for yourself.
Health provider. Do health providers provide health?
Well, and then when I say health provider, sometimes I feel like I'm talking about the insurance company. And so I don't know what to call people anymore. Whoever you see to oversee your health.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So
yeah.
I think I should be in charge of my own health. That's why I don't have a health provider.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. And if you're on this webinar, you are probably taking quite a bit of initiative to have some control over your own health. And so we commend you for that. That's a big deal. Somehow you found this webinar. Some of you aren't familiar with the Diabetes Solution Kit. So we're going to chat about that today. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about phase 1 of the Diabetes Solution Kit. And then there's actually 3 phases in this book. And this is our solution to reversing your type 2. And the beautiful part about this is probably the least expensive way to reverse type 2. It is the most simple. Here's your book. This is the hard copy. You can also get the digital version, but this is what we're going to be talking about primarily today. Phase 1, just to, if you missed that webinar, we talked about the goal is really to stay under 20 net carbs per day. And we talk about how to do that, what foods are best. Also talking about exercise, stress. We have some meal plans, etc. We really dug into some of that on that webinar. And so today we're going to talk about what comes next. What do we do in phase 2? When do we go to phase 2? How do we introduce new foods, etc.? So I want to kind of see where we're at. The majority of you right now, over 50% of you are in phase 1, which is great. That is where we see most people fall. I think when we do these webinars, you've typically maybe just got the Diabetes Solution Kit, you're just getting started, or maybe you've had this for a while. Maybe you've had this for a year or so, and you're still just getting started, right? There are some people who bought this with great intentions and didn't quite take off, but guess what? It's the beginning of January. What a great time to get started, right? Brand new month, brand new year. Let's do this. So we're going to dive into phase 2. If you haven't filled out that poll, feel free to do that. Phase 2. So quick recap of phase 1. Like I mentioned, you're eating 20 net grams of carbs per day. You're introducing some different lifestyle choices. Maybe you're trying to get a little bit more movement. You're trying to reduce your stress, like I had mentioned. And you're writing this stuff down in your Diabetes Solution Kit. Okay, so now your numbers have gotten to maybe your blood sugar number readings are, I think we say when they get to about 100, you can start to move on to phase two. And Dr. Saunders, would you say that you still think it's 100, or would you prefer they get a little lower before they even move on?
I think the ideal is to be between 70 and 90 before moving on, because that 70 to 90 is a good indication that you don't have insulin resistance anymore. And so even though technically the blood sugar is normal, it's not optimal, put it that way. And so if you just do it a little while longer, you can get to the optimum range, and then you're less likely to have to go back to phase one after you move to phase two. So I just everybody's different in how they should do it, but just consider getting it down to 70 to 90 consistently in the morning.
Okay. So once you get to that point, you get to start phase two. And that's where some fun really begins, I think. That's where you get to find out about a little bit more about your body. So if you're following along, it'll be somewhere around page like 44-ish, I think, in the book, somewhere around there. And this is where we dig into phase two. This is a little bit different. This is where we reintroduce some other foods. Now, does that mean, okay, I got my carbs down, let's try a Snickers candy bar and see what happens? I mean, I guess you could try that. That wouldn't be probably the wisest choice. But we talk a lot in this book about the glycemic index, and that gives us an idea of where some good foods might be to try. In our book, we actually have, I can't see myself now, so I don't even know if I'm showing you this. Okay, so we have kind of this list here. And I just want to talk with Dr. Saunders about some of this. The goal, really, what you get to do in phase two is basically double the amount of carbs that you were having. So you get to jump to 40, which is exciting. And there's even a note in there that says you could go to 60, depending upon where your numbers fall. But let's say we get done, we're eating pretty well, pretty clean, low carb. We want to introduce some new foods. What would you recommend, Dr. Saunders?
Okay, so the one of the important things to consider is that if you are exercising, remember in phase one and last week we talked about how the cells are full of glucose. They're just jam packed, which is why they don't make those insulin receptors anymore, which is what makes you resistant to insulin. So what the purpose then, what you want to do next is to use up all of the glucose, the sugar that's in those cells. And so what really helps a lot for insulin sensitivity is exercise. So the first thing I would recommend when you're moving to phase two, especially, but gosh, phase one it's important too. Phase one is like, okay, we have a diet, and what it doesn't matter what your blood sugar is, your glucose, and except the morning one we look at. Phase two, there's two things I would recommend first. Number one, have an exercise program, because you need to be using up that glucose. Number two, is phase two is the best time to have a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, because this is the point at which you're looking for, what foods can I eat? What things bother me? And I told the story before about a woman that had a continuous glucose monitor put on, and she said, wow, things really surprised her. Like, for example, she could eat bread and it didn't affect her blood sugar at all. But she had some nachos and it shot up to 200, and she was on phase two. She'd already been through phase one. And so, knowing what affects you, what kinds of things affect you. We had somebody else who called in. It wasn't my patient. It was someone who called into the program or wrote into the program and said that it was gum. It was sugar-free gum. That the CGM revealed what was going on. And when they had sugar-free gum, then the glucose started going up. So it's just so useful to know your numbers so that you know what you're doing and you can follow it along. It just makes it so much easier. So exercise and get a continuous glucose monitor.
Now let's chat about this a little bit. How many of you have a continuous glucose monitor? Post that in the chat. Not everybody's able to get them. Is that right? Where are we at today? I feel like this
Yeah.
changes all the time.
You still need a prescription, and most insurances won't cover it unless you have type 1 insulin dependent diabetes. But that's changing rather rapidly. You can go online now and sign up for a continuous glucose monitor, and a doctor still needs to prescribe it, but it's an online doctor that you never have to see. And they prescribe it, and you pay a monthly fee of like $200 a month. And then you can have a continuous glucose monitor. Um, and But a lot of people, you can just ask your doctor, say, "Gosh, I'll pay for it." The Libre is around $80 a month, if I remember right, or is it $8 every 2 weeks because it's a 2 week monitor, maybe $160 a month. And the Dexcom is quite a bit more. I think it was closer to $300 a month. So it does make a difference. The two main types of monitors, they're different. One's a 10-day, one's a 14-day. One's more expensive. Clearly, they say it's better. You know what? What you're looking for, it's perfectly okay to use either one because, yeah, they're 10% off or even 20% off. What does that mean? Well, if it's 100, that means it's somewhere between 80 and 120. Okay. What if it goes up to 150? Well, that's a significant difference. That's a change. That's real. So it gives you an idea still, even though it's not perfectly accurate.
Okay, I'm just going to read through some of these comments here. I love this. Sandra said, I haven't started yet getting info to help my husband who wants to get off of metformin. I need to help him, and I'm so confused. You've come to the right place, and good for you for helping. First of all, what a great goal that you want to get off of metformin. That is wonderful.
Mhm.
And that you're also willing to help your spouse do this. I just, what a difference that makes when you have someone who is able to help. So that is awesome, Sandra. We are so glad that you're here. These webinars are very helpful. We've been doing these for a long time. So many of you on the webinar have radically changed your lifestyle and feel really good. I can see some of you here. So comment below if that's you. And then we have a lot of stories from people who were right where you are, just getting started, feeling overwhelmed, maybe just got a diagnosis and were handed a prescription for a pill, not even really knowing what's going on in your body. And so that's what Dr. Saunders does. He tells us all of the things that are happening in our body, explains to us maybe, a lot of the information that we didn't get when we went in and found out we had type 2, many people say they didn't really know that food could make a difference. They didn't know for sure where their numbers were supposed to be. They didn't really know what their medication was doing. And so this is a really good place. We felt like this was a big need for people who have type 2. And so you're at the right place. Okay, let me keep looking here. Lots of, Texas, Tennessee. Hello, Terry. Okay. Sandy says, I ordered the kit before Christmas. When do I get it? Sandy, did you order the digital version? If you order the digital version, you can have that right away.
Isn't it either way? You get the digital version immediately, and then you
I don't know
wait.
for sure how they do it, but I think so. I think you would have that right away.
Yeah, you can get the
And
digital.
if you don't have the hard copy yet, you can always send a message to support@bartonpublishing.com. Let's talk a little bit about our readings in Canada. Dr. Saunders knows these better than I do. So what would be a good blood sugar reading
Oh yeah,
if you're in Canada?
yeah. So four point something between 4 and 5 is a great place to be. If it's a little lower than 4, that's okay. So the 70 equates to, I think, 3.8 or something like that, and then 90 equates to 4.9, or it's there. So I'm saying 70 to 90 just to make it easy. In the same sense, I'm saying between 4 and 5, so 4 point something. If you're in Canada, is an optimum place to be.
All right. What else do we have here? Jerry says, we have all been there. We wish you well. We wish you well, but can tell you that these meds do work. I've dropped from 2 pills a day to 1, and now I'm moving to none. Also, you have good support from these people. Oh, Jerry, that was so kind. Okay, I gotta copy that. I'm gonna send that to the team. Okay. Um, okay, I don't know for sure what your name is. Maybe Cindy. Blood sugar is currently at 87. Well, hey, there you go.
There you go.
So if your
Good.
blood sugar is 87, how long has it been there? That is awesome. And congratulations. John says 40 carbs. That's about 132, 130. How do you say that? 132, 130 seconds of a Snickers bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, then,
you don't want to waste your carbs on something like that. Or maybe you do. Maybe that's your goal, to one day just have a Snicker one day and that makes your life good. Maybe you could do that. I don't know. I don't know how many carbs are in that bar, but you get to make that decision for yourself. That's the good thing. Okay, so a lot of people on here do not have the continuous glucose monitors. So it is good then to kind of talk about some of these foods. I want to dig into these a little bit. So, for example, if you look in your book, it talks about a baked potato has a value of 125. Dates are at 103, which are really high glycemic index foods. Okay, watermelon is incredibly high. That might not be a fruit that you want to introduce right away. I don't think. And pineapple too, is that right? That's probably a
yeah,
really high one, I would assume.
all the tropical fruits tend to be pretty high in sugar and have a high glycemic index.
So here's an example. It says milk is low glycemic, while orange juice and whole wheat bread are medium range, and corn flakes and white rice close to 100. I feel like over the years, I've seen people when their blood sugar gets low, they immediately, and maybe I don't say that, this was just in the past. I see people asking for orange juice, or they always have orange juice around. Do people still do that? What are your thoughts about that?
Um, it's not a good way to go, because when you think about what orange juice does, it gives you an immediate sugar rush. That's true. But for some people, it causes a high insulin, because that insulin, the sugar went up, so the insulin's going to respond by going up, and that's going to drop the sugar low again. And some people, they're chasing their sugar around from like the 200s and 300s to down into the 30s or 50s. You know, this chasing is not a really good idea. So instead of that, have something else around, like carrots or almonds, that are going to be a really low glycemic index, but are going to still give you sugar to allow it to go up. My father-in-law has diabetes and gives himself insulin injections, and he gave himself an insulin injection and then wasn't really hungry, so didn't eat anything. So his blood sugar dropped down really low. And so we did find a drink for him, but same thing happened. It went up and came back down. And so the paramedics got there and they checked it, and it was in the 30s. His blood sugar was in the 30s. So it's not best to have what you were always told, have orange juice or a glucose drink or something like that. It's not really the best.
Okay. So at the bottom on this list that I was showing you guys earlier, I have my notes on this other page. So on this one right here on this list, we talk about, I can see peanuts being really low there on the bottom. Red lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, apples, and pears. I'm just going to read some of these lower ones so that you can kind of think about some that might be a good option for you. Oranges and peaches, all bran cereal, grapes. We're getting higher. Macaroni, carrots, green peas. These are just some examples here. Think through some of these foods, and if this is something that I mean, I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to introduce macaroni right away on the low glycemic, or even if it's, that's a lot of carbs. Macaroni has a lot of carbs. So, but as you start to introduce these things, watch what your body does. See how you handle it. We have most people, if you're in phase 2 right now, tell us what were some of the foods that you introduced as you switched to phase 2. We have a lot of recipes in the back of our book, that are very low carb. So, cream cheese and eggs, pancake type of thing. We have Dr. Saunders ceviche, which I love ceviche. Bacon wrapped asparagus. So you can see very low carb things, right? When you introduce phase twoers. There's at least about 10 of you I know on the webinar right now. Well, 7 maybe, who are on phase 2. What did you introduce? We're just curious to learn that. Anything else that we want to really talk about in phase 2? What else are some big changes that we want to be careful with? You know, it's that you're jumping into eating some more carbs. How do we do that?
Mm. Um, to look at it in terms of how much fiber can I get from the food. So it's changing from the idea of I'm eating for taste, I want a Snickers bar, to I'm eating for nutrition. So Snickers bar is not going to be high on your nutrition list. But what if you were to choose something else that you liked, that you enjoy, that is higher on your nutrition list? So if you like an apple or an orange, yeah, that's pretty high carbohydrates, but it also has fiber, and the glycemic index isn't nearly as high as a Snickers bar. And you can have one a day if and still get under your 40 grams of carbohydrates. And so working up to allow more carbohydrates in your diet includes choosing foods that you say, is it worth it? You ask that question. Is it worth using up my entire day's carbohydrates for that? And generally look for high fiber, things that are high in fiber. So fruits and vegetables are great. And just choose something that you like and have that around. Nuts and seeds, especially, you know, like she said, peanuts are high on the list, or low on the list in this case.
Low,
So
yeah.
low number of carbs. Nuts and seeds are really good. So those kinds of things, that's what I would choose first.
I know we have had a lot of people that will move to phase 2, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a place where they're taking a few more free days than they normally do, adding in a few more carbs than they kind of planned on. And the beauty of this program, Dr. Saunders will tell you, this isn't the only way to reverse type 2. This is just a really simple way to do it. But they will find that they can just go back to phase 1, start phase 1 again until they get their numbers where they want them to be. And then you move to phase 2, and with the end goal of phase 3. And we are going to talk about that on another webinar. But it is a very simple program where you're just increasing your carbs, checking your body to see how you respond to it, learning how to implement exercise for the reasons that Dr. Saunders has mentioned, and reducing stress. I mean, that's the general overview, I think, of the entire program, isn't it? Did I miss anything? And this
Yeah.
is what you share with the patients that come into your office as well.
Yeah.
We made the cheaper version.
You get what you pay for.
So for under $20, you can get all of this information in a digital form. Kevin had messaged and said, Kevin's on our team. What did he say? Everyone gets the digital solution kit immediately after checkout. If you didn't go to that page, check your email for the link. So you should have a link in your email to get the digital version of this, and you can get that right away. So go to bartonwebinar.com. You'll find a link to the diabetes solution kit and use code webinar25. That's one word, and you'll save 25% on the diabetes solution kit, where we break down phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and a whole bunch of other information, your grocery list, your meal plans, etc. Okay, so let's dig into some more questions here. Tom says, Happy New Year. I have gotten off of sweets for a month. I would like to add in a smoothie in the morning. What fruits would you recommend?
Okay, smoothies are an issue because smoothies are pretty high carbohydrates usually. And so by being off sweets, the question I would have is, does that mean that you are that your blood sugar is normal, that you finished phase 1, you're in the 70 to 90 range, your blood glucose is continuously normal, and you're ready to move into phase 2. So if you're ready to move into phase 2 and you say, okay, I want to add a smoothie in, that would be a great thing to have, like if you had a continuous glucose monitor, because the fruits that are in there are generally low glycemic. So you add things like berries, strawberries, raspberries, boysenberries, blueberries, and because they're pretty low glycemic, they do have sugar in them, but the sugar is fairly slowly absorbed. So those are the kinds of foods to add. A lot of people put bananas in smoothies, and bananas will raise that glycemic index pretty high. Adding fiber to your smoothie lowers the glycemic index. So having people put greens in their smoothies, and that's, some liquid and some fiber and some nutrition with very little sugar. So that would be good. So if you had more of the greens and maybe a few of the berries, and avoiding the things like bananas, pineapple, mango, the things that have a pretty high sugar, then that might help, because it's so variable. When you're making a smoothie, everything changes. Just adding fiber, like I said, changes it. Putting fat in it changes it. Some people put like peanut butter in their smoothies, and that changes how your body's going to react to it. And so it's not simple. As a general rule, if you're going to have smoothies, having smoothies in the morning is better than in the evening. And then they do tend to raise blood sugar pretty easily. So I don't know that a smoothie is a great idea anyway. I had one this morning. I had berries, bananas. I put green, and then of course the fiber in it, fiber greens, and then powdered greens in it.
But you're bulking. You have different goals.
Yeah.
Okay, Monty says, I have a long list of questions. I'm at work on my laptop with no charger, so I have 40 minutes of a charge. I'm going to send you some questions. Okay, hold on, let's see. During the holidays, I reread the Diabetes Solution Kit. Good for you, Monty. And I read the Healthy Heart Solution Kit. I so thoroughly enjoy these webinars that I have the following questions, and we're going to get through as many as we can. Okay, I'm currently fasting, and I read that when you're fasting, you should not take supplements because it could behave as a meal and may cause insulin spikes. Is this true? What about medications?
If you're taking something for treating something, so for example, if you have thyroid medication, and that's treating low thyroid, if you stop taking thyroid medication, then you're not going to have any thyroid. And so that's really important to continue that. At most medications, you could continue, but you have to be really careful with medications, because blood pressure medications, for example, can bottom out your blood pressure, because when you're fasting, your blood pressure is going to come down to a normal level. And then you add a medication to that, and it could drop it too low. Blood sugar medications also do the same thing with blood glucose. So if you're taking diabetes medications and you start fasting, you're not taking in any glucose, so you're going to have normal blood glucose, and then you take a medication and it's going to artificially drop it low, which could be too low. You're getting hypoglycemic. So generally, the rule that I have is someone's fasting, especially if they're doing a long-term fast, which is more than 3 days, then they should avoid those two types of medications, the high blood pressure medication and the diabetes medications.
He
Other
asked
medications
about, okay, I got to think of losartan and atorvastatin.
Atorvastatin, yeah, I don't think anybody should be taking atorvastatin anyway. It's really contraindicated in people who are trying to rebuild and repair their bodies, because cholesterol is needed to rebuild and repair. And so if you're dropping your cholesterol, then you're not making coenzyme Q10, which is needed for energy. You're not making testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all the things that the support, the hormonal support, you lose that. So it's kind of important to not take that anyway. And then other medications, though, there are some medications that should be continued. If you're taking things for epilepsy, for example, stopping that right away would probably not be a good idea. It's really just the two of them. I guess three, the cholesterol medications too. If you're taking something for cholesterol, you won't need it during the fast. If you're taking something for blood pressure, you won't need it during fasting, during a long-term fast. And if you're taking something for blood sugar, you won't need that during a long-term fast. And the supplements, the idea of the supplements causing high insulin or insulin spike, which is going to drop your blood glucose and cause hypoglycemia. Yeah, that's possible. But yeah, just consider that supplements are food. But again, if you have a supplement that you're treating something, there was an example of someone who had an enzyme deficiency and was treating the enzyme deficiency. Oh, it was a vitamin B2 to treat the enzyme deficiency. Then I said, yes, stay on the vitamin B2 while you're fasting. Because that's a treatment for a problem. It's specifically to help your metabolism function well, and you still need your metabolism while you're fasting. So in that case, I told that person to stay on vitamin B2. So if you're treating a problem, the rule is stay with it, except for under those three conditions: blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol. And then anything else, supplements, the things that are just supplements for nutrient supplements aren't necessary and shouldn't be taken.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question just as a teaser to encourage all of you to watch a previous webinar on cholesterol. At what number do you maybe get concerned about cholesterol? What cholesterol number?
If it drops below 200, that's when you should start worrying about it. If it goes above 260, you should start worrying about it. 280, above 300, you should start worrying about it, and below 200. If you look at just the death rate of according to cholesterol levels, somebody who has a total cholesterol level of 120 has double the death rate of somebody who has a cholesterol of 220. And as it drops lower, that death rate goes up quite rapidly. So the lower cholesterol increases your risk of death. And so there is an optimum place to be, and that is around 220. So it'd be like 210 to 250, somewhere in there is the perfect place to be. And that's pretty much across the board. The largest study ever done was a Korean study on 12.8 million adults. And this is 12 million more than the next largest study. This is huge. And it showed actually the same results as the other studies, and that is low cholesterol is much riskier than high cholesterol. And that no matter what age or gender, you end up with this, like 225 is the perfect place to be. It's optimal at any age and any sex, and no matter who you are, no matter what other disease you have, that 220 is still the perfect place to be. The lowest death risk.
Awesome. I think we've done a couple of webinars really digging into that. And so I just love it, because I keep running into people who are taking cholesterol medicine, and I always say, what was your cholesterol when they decided to put you on it? And then I find out and I'm like, oh, Dr. Saunders wouldn't agree, but I don't say anything. So I'm always curious about that. Okay, this is a really good question from Richard. When we move from phase 1 to phase 2, we start introducing carbs. Why are we reintroducing carbs? Are they good for us?
No, not necessarily. You don't have to. It's really just the phase 1 is a cleanse or a detox, and you're detoxing off of the glucose, because literally your cells are toxic on sugar. These cells, inside the cell is jam-packed with glucose. There's tons of glucose in there. You got to get it out. And if you keep eating glucose, then it's not going to come out of the cells, because you're always going to have this high blood sugar level. So getting off of the carbs helps you to detox. So that's the idea of phase one. And then phase two is like, okay, you've detoxified. Now you can have some normal food. And part of that is that when studies were done on the like the Atkins diet, the ketogenic diet. Dr. Atkins had this, great diet. He wrote books, a best-selling book in the 1970s, and it was a big thing back then. And so they've done a lot of studies since then comparing that diet to other diets. And the fact is, people really have a hard time staying on it. Yeah, it works. They feel better, but people have a hard time staying on it. So that's why we introduce phase two. We go, okay, phase one isn't something that everybody or most people are not going to be able to just always be on phase one. And so they say, okay, I'm cleansing, I'm detoxing until my blood sugar's normal. And then I'm going to be able to have some more normal foods, like I'm going to eat an apple. I couldn't eat an apple before. Now I can eat an apple. So that's the idea. It's not that the carbs are good for you necessarily. It's really tolerance.
Okay, I've seen some questions coming in about some of our supplements. Esther is wondering if you can mix metformin with synochroma.
Oh yes, they can be mixed. Metformin, synochroma, and the only two that I tell you not to mix, and there's no good like research to show that you shouldn't. It's just that they do the exact same thing, and that is the berberine and metformin are essentially the same thing. They work in the same enzyme. So choose one. Pick the metformin, pick the berberine. I personally choose the berberine because it has all the same benefits without the side effects, without any ill effects, and there's so many other things that berberine does. So like reduces cancer and actually cures cancer. I've had there was a book on that, reversing. Do you reverse cancer? No, I don't know. Anyway, a woman who cured her cancer with it.
I'm sure we can't say that. I'm sure we'll have to edit that later, but
Okay. We'll have
no,
to
it's good.
put
You said it.
that
Yep.
big red X thing across there.
We're gonna say this is where we said something that we will get in trouble for. We're just gonna put a thing there that says that. So I like that idea. Okay, John says, how long after eating something should I test for the hit to the glucose level? 10 minutes, 2 hours?
Okay. That's a really good question because there's no like specific answer for every food. If it's a high glycemic index, something like watermelon, oh yeah, you'll see it quickly. In less than an hour, you're going to see that blood sugar go up high. But you can eat the same amount of calories in ice cream, for example, which is a relatively low glycemic index. You're going, what? Ice cream, low glycemic index? Well, compared to watermelon, it actually is, because the fat slows down the absorption, slows down the emptying of the stomach, so you get slower absorption of glucose. Whereas the watermelon has practically no fiber, practically no fat. It's just like water, like sugar water dumped into your system, and it's all immediately absorbed, and your blood sugar shoots up quickly and then comes back down quickly. Whereas ice cream is going to be slowly let out of your stomach a little bit at a time. So it's going like this, and then gradually. So an hour later, it's still going up. 2 hours later, it's still going up. So it's just very different depending on what you're eating. So the advantage of the continuous glucose monitor is you can see the big picture, the whole thing. It's not like you have to say, okay, in 10 minutes, I'll prick my finger and check it. In an hour, I'll prick my finger and check it again. You can get that continuous effect of how that food is affecting your blood sugar.
Okay, Francis from New Zealand wants to know if you can take berberine every day or do you have to have a 2 to 4 week break, like every 8 weeks? That's what is mentioned on Google. What do you recommend?
Um, Almost everything needs a break of some kind. So what they're talking about on Google is kind of universal. Turmeric does this, wormwood, extracts. Doing something every single day, you become, I don't know, used to it, accustomed to it, and it just stops working. And that's the way biological systems work. And so I always say you can do 5 days on, 2 days off in a week. That works. We've discussed that before. I know the research on, what was it, wormwood. There was a 7 days on, 7 days off that worked. It continuously worked. You could get rid of parasites, malaria by doing 7 days on, 7 days off. And then if you're taking it long term, then you take a week off or 2 weeks off. Yeah, what Google says is true. That's one way of doing it. It's not the only way. And so I've seen research on other herbs where 5 days on, 2 days off works well. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anybody knows what the answer is, but any one of those systems might work.
Okay, Tim says, I have the CGM Libra 2 and it constantly hits around 97 to 140 to 78 in the morning. It spikes when I eat lunch and then it drops below 78 and my monitor starts beeping, low glucose warning. I'm taking no meds. Also, what are the 3 tests to check my glucose again? Finally, what happens if I stop my injections and just see what happens?
Okay. Do the tests again to see how much insulin you're making. And if you're insulin dependent and you're keeping it between 70 and 140, that's actually not bad. You're doing pretty well. So the question then is your pancreas putting out any insulin to help you with that? So the next step is actually do those tests. So your question of what the tests were, it's the insulin level, C-peptide, hemoglobin A1C, and then the glucose. So actually those 4 tests. And then those, when you do that on one blood draw, that gives you an idea. It's the long-term, short-term glucose and the long-term, short-term insulin. And that can be helpful. And another test, if you have a lack of insulin, like it's lately being called type 1.5, where you make insulin but not enough, so you have only a little bit of insulin, then you can do the 3-hour glucose insulin test. And that means you drink a glucose solution. Well, first you check your glucose and insulin, then you drink a solution, and then every hour, actually the CGM is going to be a better way to look at it, but you still want to know your insulin, how your insulin is responding to the glucose. So you still need that 3-hour test to check your insulin over time to see, because if your glucose is going up and your insulin is only getting a little bit up, then you still may need to be really careful about eating very low glycemic index foods.
Edwin says, my BMI is 22. I am a slim person. Each time I listen to anyone speak, they seem to make an assumption that we are overweight. Can you comment?
Yes. It's not about fat. Yeah. You know what? We have purposely never made it about fat, and we don't talk about in the diabetes solution care. We don't talk about weight loss. That's not an issue. Occasionally we've mentioned, if you're overweight, you're gonna lose weight in doing this because you're gonna burn fat. But that's not the issue. The issue is insulin resistance. And people can be underweight and still be insulin resistant. So working on insulin resistance is the important part of it, because if those cells are full of sugar, if they're filled with glucose, they're not going to be making insulin receptors, and you're going to be insulin resistant, and the insulin just isn't going to work because you don't have any receptors. And there, we've had a lot of people who've come on and said, you know, I really don't want to lose weight. I'm kind of at the perfect weight. How do I get insulin sensitive without losing weight? We don't restrict the diet. We don't, you can eat whatever you want. Read the book. The book says you can have as much food as you want. It doesn't,
Yeah.
you're just restricting carbs so that you can detox from the carbohydrate.
Monty says, what about drinking water alone, making your stomach full? Does it cause insulin like eating? What are your recommendations when doing an extended long-term fast?
Okay, that is a great question, Monty. Okay, so um, studies have been done on this, and there are certain things that do not induce insulin. The taste of sour, the taste of bitter, and plain water. So people that have like black coffee, black tea, and that's all they have, that does not induce insulin. What does induce insulin? Anything with protein. Fat almost doesn't. Anything with protein, and then of course anything with sugar and anything that tastes sweet. And if it has flavor in it, then it induces the insulin. So, Monty, the answer to your question is water is fine. Plain water is fine.
And a follow-up to that, Monty says, I gather from my reading that you view fasting as more important than working out in impacting metabolic syndrome markers for reducing blood sugar, blood pressure, fat on the belly, or waist and cholesterol. Is this true? Where does stress fit in the mix or ranking for diabetes, for developing heart disease?
Okay. Wow. Okay. So, darn, that is a great question because we've placed a lot of emphasis on diet because, gosh, diet is just such a problem and such an issue that we placed a lot of emphasis on it. But gosh, I don't want to de-emphasize the exercise. Exercise is really, really, really important. The best way to maintain your function and stay out of a nursing home is exercise, not diet. So even if you're overweight, if you're exercising, you're better off than people who are the perfect weight and not exercising. So so because of the toxicity of glucose and all that, we emphasize the diet, but exercise, just stay with it. That exercise is really important for everything. Okay, then your second question about stress. What about stress? Stress is huge. Your stress hormones are huge. How do you deal with stress? Because you can't avoid stress. Stress is life. Life is change. Change is stress. Things happen. You lose a job. People die. You're going to be stressed. There's no way around that. So people that tell you just avoid stress, just don't get stressed. Well, that's not possible. So there is a solution though, and that is instead of worrying about stress, the next best thing, or actually even the better thing, is to rebuild and repair. And so you have the stress part that's called the catabolic metabolism, and then you have the rebuilding and repairing, which is the anabolic metabolism. And you get anabolic every night when you sleep. So how do you do that if you're really stressed out? And how do you get anabolic and rebuild and repair and cleanse and detox every night? Well, the way you do that, and Sachin Panda has written a book called The Circadian Code. We've talked about this a lot, especially in the heart health webinar, about how it's so important to be anabolic by getting to bed every night by 10 o'clock. Just the regularity is how your adrenal glands adapt to stress. So if you don't have regularity, then you don't adapt to stress very well. And so when you're stressed, it's worse. Everything gets worse. Heart disease gets worse. You know, when you're stressed, your heart doesn't repair. All the damage to blood vessels that happens, it happens to everyone. But if you're stressed, it won't repair. That's the problem. But because you don't get into anabolic mode, you've got to get into anabolic mode and repair all the damage that's done. So that's where stress comes in. And it's really, really important. Go to bed by 10, sleep 8 hours a day, exercise every day. Exercise helps you to sleep better at night also. This is like they work together. And then, if I can now emphasize the diet, yes, having a good diet, getting plenty of nutrition, and then time limit your feeding, your eating. Feeding comes from the mouse studies, and that's the way the researchers always say it, time-restricted feeding. For people, we call it eating. So time-restricted eating. So if you eat from 8 a.m. To 4 p.m., that's kind of an ideal place to be. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and nothing after 4. That's a great place to be when you're not fasting.
Monty also said that he is a walking testimonial to fasting, having a great impact on inflammation. I'm in line for knee surgery. It has been so painful at every step. After doing an extended fast, I can tell you that my knee pain is 99.5% non-existent. I have a very severe knee condition, but I have not felt this way in many, many years, virtually pain-free.
So Monty and I talked about this, and he was saying, well, what about the surgery? I said, just put off the surgery until you've repaired the metabolism, because what happens is when you're anabolic, you repair everything. You repair your brain, you repair your eyeballs, you repair your joints, your knees, your hands, everything gets better when you're repairing, when you're in anabolic metabolism. So a long-term fast, what are you doing? You're making a bunch of ghrelin, which releases human growth hormone, which puts you in anabolic metabolism for a long period of time. So you can do it for weeks. And as you're fasting, you're repairing the whole time. And your autophagy, you're taking out everything that's dead and putting in everything that's new and repairing everything that's new. And so good on you, Monty.
Yes, it's awesome. Okay, so Johnson is new and is asking, what are the health benefits of combining Cinechroma and Fiber Green only?
Okay, Cinechroma is a supplement to help you because I do a lot of tests. And if you've had the test, then you know you may need it, you may not need it. But I do a lot of testing on people's nutrition. And what I often find is people are deficient in chromium, vanadium, selenium, vitamin D, and vitamin K. These are common deficiencies, and they all affect glucose. If you are deficient in them, you don't utilize glucose very well. Vitamin D makes your insulin receptors more sensitive. Chromium and vanadium are necessary for your enzymes to work properly that use glucose for energy. If you don't have enough chromium, you could have diabetes just from a deficiency of chromium, type 2, technically, diabetes. So the purpose for the supplement is to support all of that because these are common deficiencies. That's all. That's the only reason. You may not need them. I don't know. It might be like taking water for you. But some people definitely need them. And we've had people come onto our program and say, wow, I started taking the Cinechroma and all of a sudden, like, everything is normal. Everything came back to normal. And so when Leslie reads those to everybody, she says, now you may not have this same benefit because you may not be deficient in that nutrient. Nevertheless, it's a good support. So that's the purpose for the supplement. Now, what about the fiber greens? Mm-hmm. Fiber is wonderful, and the greens provide nutrients, and I don't recommend that you take fiber greens while you have type 2. Why? Because the sweet in it, the stevia, can cause you to release insulin and make you more insulin resistant. So just not a good idea.
Johnson had also asked, what are the health benefits of combining Cinechroma and berberine every day?
Okay, those are great. In fact, we had talked about, are we going to put berberine in this Cinechroma supplement? And the reason we didn't, because berberine has a lot of other uses. And so we didn't want it to be relegated to only for diabetics kind of thing. Berberine is for improving your metabolism. It's good for heart disease. It decreases cancer risk. It's good for people who already have cancer. So berberine has a lot of uses. So we separated that out. But yeah, you can put them together. They're great.
Okay, I started typing this and I realized I might as well just read it. Jim said, I like Nature Valley sweet and salty peanut bars because they seem to not increase my glucose if taken in the afternoon. Is that correct? This bar lists a total carb value of 20 grams. And so I think those things are up to you. If you want to have 20
Yeah.
grams of carbs out of your 40 in a bar, that's up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Okay. Anku says, can I stop taking insulin if I'm taking berberine and synochroma?
Anku, the answer is no, not necessarily. So the way to assess whether you need insulin or not is to do the 4 tests: the C-peptide, insulin level, hemoglobin A1C, and glucose. And then to assess from that is to say how much insulin am I making depending on how much glucose I have, and is this a long-term problem or is it a short-term problem? So those are the idea. That's the way that you determine whether you need insulin or not. If you have high insulin levels and normal blood glucose levels, then you definitely do not need insulin. But if you have high insulin levels and you have really high blood sugar levels, then you definitely do not need insulin. You only need insulin in those cases where you are insulin deficient. So if you're not making enough insulin, you may need insulin, and that's where it goes.
Okay, there's so many good questions, you guys. Oh, we almost need another webinar just for the rest of these questions. I'm going to
Let's
just,
do
I think,
that. Let's make our next webinar. Just take
just
these
questions. Let's do that.
questions, and then we'll start our next webinar with
See if I
that.
can get all these saved. Let's do one more. Where was it? Oh, this was good. What is your opinion of buying a meter for ketones? Are we talking of testing ketones in the urine or in the blood?
Yeah. Okay. So the meter is for the blood, and if you want to know your ketones, that's fine. We don't put that in the book as that's an important part because technically it's a ketogenic diet, but really our purpose is detox, and this is glucose detox, and not for the purpose of getting ketones. Now, if you burn fat and make ketones, there's a lot of benefits to that. A lot. Your brain works better. Things repair better. You make less inflammation. Your inflammation goes down, as Monty was just telling us, because now he's making ketones, right? He's not eating anything, and he's using up all the fat on his body. So so there's a lot of benefits to making ketones, but to measure it is fine. But that's not really our purpose. We want one measurement to make it easy. Well, 2 actually. You're only measuring how much carbs you're taking in, and then the second thing you're looking at is what's your blood glucose.
All right. Okay, Dr. Saunders, thank you so much. We're gonna start these questions again next week. So we'll see you.
Mañana.
Yeah, we'll see you then. I had somebody just post a question here that said, are there webinars more specific to people just starting out? Definitely. So I'd recommend that you go to bartonwebinar.com, and there you will find a link to our YouTube channel. Now, our YouTube channel will have 200 plus videos, but if you find one where we talk about phase 1, we just did it a couple of weeks ago. Actually, did I just upload it? Let me see if I can find the link to that. Let me check here. I'm just going to post the link right in the chat, and I don't have it. Oh, I don't have it back. I think I just got it back yesterday, actually. So it'll be uploaded soon. I would recommend that. It's episode 222. It's called phase 1. It'll probably go up within the next couple of days. And so I would recommend that. You could also look through any of those other webinars. Let me see if there's anything specifically. Sugar diabetes, episode 208. That's where we talk about what's happening in your body when you're diagnosed with type 2. There's a lot of them. Honestly, you could probably pick a lot of these. This was just a little bit more in depth for people who are going into the next phase of reversing their type 2. And so I understand how this could be kind of a lot of information. But I hope that helps. bartonwebinar.com. Again, that'll take you to, you'll see some links for our YouTube channel there. And then guys, next week, we will try to answer a lot of these questions that we weren't able to get to because there were a lot. So we appreciate you guys. Tomorrow will be the webinar on our healthy heart. So if you haven't registered for that, you can do that at bartonwebinar.com. That is at noon tomorrow. That is another really good webinar with Dr. Saunders. And so there is some overlap for people, you know, who have type 2 and they also want a healthy heart. And so you'll learn a lot of information on that webinar too. Okay, I think that's it for me today. I will see you guys either tomorrow or next week. Invite a friend. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.